So if you're new to tennis and you're looking for ways to improve your forehand, or maybe you've been playing for a long time, but your forehand just doesn't feel right, well, guess what? This video is for you.
Hello, it's Ryan from 2minutetennis.net, and in this video, I'm going to help you improve your forehand by showing you Fernando Verdasco. Now, this video is courtesy of Essential Tennis, so thank you so much, Ian, for allowing me to use it. Be sure to subscribe to Essential Tennis. I've put their link in the description below. All right, now the first thing I want you to do is I want you to film yourself from the front so that you can compare your technique to Verdasco's. All right, the first thing is this split step. See this little hop? You should constantly be moving your feet when you play tennis, and you want to do a little hop as your opponent strikes the ball. All these things, by the way, I'm going to demonstrate in front of the camera after I do this analysis, so I'm going to explain everything. So if you have a question, stick around to the end. I'm going to answer all of your questions. The next thing, after you split step, is the moment you see that the ball comes to your forehand, you need to get your body sideways. Now, it doesn't matter which way you move. You could move forward, you could move back, you can move left, you can move right. It doesn't matter. The moment you see the ball come to your forehand, get your body side on. The forehand ground stroke is a rotational shot. We want to rotate our body into the shot. That's only going to occur if we rotate first to create that possibility. So you want to coil your body so you can uncoil into the shot. So when you film yourself, look to see that you're getting sideways to the camera so that that rotation into the shot is possible. The next idea, notice where his non-hitting hand is. His non-hitting hand is on the racket. He's taking the racket back with both hands. This again helps you to coil the body so that we can uncoil into the shot. And the last thing I want to show you is his racket position. I absolutely love this. Notice his racket is slightly higher than his head, and his strings are pointing off to the side, and they're actually slightly closed at this point. Really love this. When your racket is up in the back, you get to use gravity to help you gain acceleration rather than taking the racket down low initially. The pros tend to use a C swing, which just means they're drawing the letter C with their swing. Now the C swing is actually easier to see from the side view, but you kind of got the idea. They take the racket back high and then they drop it low and then they go high again. So that's drawing the letter C. But make sure when you turn, you get this great coiling and unit turn to really set the stage for hitting a great forehand. The next idea is the drop of the racket. Now, we talked about his hands going back together. Well, this is when his hands are going to begin separating. So notice as his racket drops, his hands now separate. So as his racket goes down, and I'm showing you a lefty and righty version of him, so no matter if you're a lefty or righty, you can see the version that works for you. Notice that his non-hitting hand begins uncoiling, and it begins rotating, allowing his hips to turn. We can see his back foot rotating up on the toe like a golfer. So when you are dropping your racket in the back, you need to begin rotating your body. That starts pulling the hitting arm through contact and really makes the kinetic chain and power seamless from body into arm, into racket, into ball. So take the racket back with both hands. You start to drop the racket. You start rotating the body. Now notice when he drops the racket, where he tilts his strings. His strings are tilted down, and you can think of it as roughly 45 degrees. And it really depends on what type of grip you have, the nuance of how much you're going to close the racket. But I can tell you with 100% certainty that the lack of closure is one of the biggest reasons why recreational players struggle hitting topspin. See, the pros will close their racket face in most cases on a topspin forehand, but recreational players tend to have the racket very straight up and down, meaning they could take a coin and they could balance it on the top edge of their racket. Here, Verdasco has his racket closed about 45 degrees, where most recreational players at this point have their racket facing straight to the side. The reason you want your strings to be closed at this point is because it helps your racket when you swing up and you're brushing up the back of the ball for topspin. It helps your strings to face forward at your target. Most recreational players, when they hit the ball, struggle. If they're struggling with topspin or they're new to the game, they're struggling to hit the back of the ball. Well, having your racket face closed prior to contact is an easy cheat in order to get your racket square against the back of the ball. Now, we started talking about the non-hitting hand, but I really want to focus on it now. Not only is his non-hitting hand helping him to uncoil, but let's just imagine he's playing tennis in waist-high water, right? So he's in the shallow end of a pool. or he's at the beach in the ocean and he's hitting forehands. I want you to notice that throughout his stroke, his non-hitting hand stays dry. It does not get wet. Now the racket gets wet. The racket drops down into the water so that it can be below the ball and brush up the back. But notice that his non-hitting hand stays dry. When you film yourself, look to see that your non-hitting hand stays out of the water and that it's not dropping, because when your non-hitting hand drops on a forehand, it tends to become a counterweight and you end up hugging yourself as you hit the ball. Again, I'm going to demonstrate what this looks like. If you're a coach, if you have a student who hugs themselves, it's because their non-hitting hand is dropping. And when you hug yourself, it makes it nearly impossible to rotate your hips into the shot the way you know you can, which is one of the keys to contacting out in front for topspin. So if you have a student, if you're a coach, or if you know that you don't turn your hips into the ball, keep your non-hitting hand up. And what I tell players is wave to your opponent as you're striking the ball. This makes it really easy to uncoil the hips, which again is one of the leading drivers of the racket coming through contact. Now, he's hitting the ball swinging from low to high. So he is brushing up the back of the ball. That is what's going to impart the spin for tons of consistency. Notice his head is super still. Again, I'm trying to give you a ton of ways that you can film yourself and compare. Hopefully you're going to watch this video again and write some notes down and look at footage of yourself from the front and see how many of these ideas you have. Keeping his head super still. In golf, they say, if you look, you won't like what you see. Because if you're looking up as you hit the golf shot, you're going to look at your shot, but it's not going to be a very good shot, right? So keep your head super still. Pound for pound, your head is super heavy, right? So when your head is moving, it can really affect your shot. And last, I want you to notice how he catches the racket up over his shoulder. Now, does Verdasco always do this? No. But do all pros do this in certain situations, especially when they're practicing their forehands? Yes. I love it when recreational players catch their racket high up over the shoulder. And the reason is because anatomically our arms tend to go toward each other. So if your non-hitting hand is up, it promotes an upward swing with your racket, which makes it very simple to hit topspin. When recreational players have their non-hitting hand down, what tends to happen is that player swings across and they're inconsistent, they hit the frame a lot, they're not accurate, and they're super frustrated. So I actually want you to catch your racket high up over the shoulder to create that consistency. He then does the split step. This is the very next forehand. Does his split step, gets sideways, takes the racket back with both hands high. You can see the tip of his racket pointing up and his strings facing off to the side. He then begins dropping his racket as he uncoils. You can see his racket face is closed. His non-hitting hand stays out of the water again, brushing up the back of the ball. Non-hitting hand is basically waving to the opponent. That's how I want you to think of it. And then he catches the racket again high over the shoulder. All right, let me show you what this looks like in front of the camera.
Now I know we just covered a lot, but I'm going to make it really simple and I'm going to use the Topspin Pro to help me demonstrate this. It's been raining for the past 4 days, but the fact that I get to still make content in my basement with the Topspin Pro and demonstrate is such an advantage to me because I have this. And if you have the Topspin Pro, and if you don't, you can get my affiliate link in the description below. You can practice this the moment you are done watching this video. All right, the first thing is the split step. You want to be moving your feet and do a little hop as your opponent hits the ball. It helps stretch the back of the legs. It helps you actually change direction so much faster and have a better first step. And it's a slight braking mechanism. So when you're going to the net and you split step, you can make sharp turns. Split step every time your opponent hits. It'll make a big difference in your ability to run down your opponent's shots. The next idea, when he takes his racket back, he turns his body. He sees that ball come to his forehand and he gets sideways immediately. It's very common that recreational players, when the ball comes off their opponent's racket, they face forward. So you just film yourself, put the phone up against the net and start hitting balls, and then review the footage and compare yourself to Verdasco. So get your body side on. Doing that is going to make it so that you can uncoil into the shot. And I don't care if it's an open stance, a closed stance, you're having to move backward, you're moving forward, you got to get side on to the ball. You're going inside out, it doesn't matter. You're going to get your body facing to your dominant side. The next idea, take the racket back with both hands. You want to coil the body so that the shoulders turn more than the hips. That produces an uncoiling effect and you get a lot of racket speed from it. So don't just get your body sideways, but take the racket back with both hands. And last, have the tip of the racket slightly higher than head level and do what I call point your strings to the crowd, as if there's a crowd of people on either side of you, right? So this is my right side, so I'm gonna point my strings to them. My strings are facing off to the side. Makes it so that the wrist angle is pretty much set, and it's gonna actually allow you to close your racket face too, so that you can get the topspin that you're looking for. So just those tips right there are gonna make a world of difference. Split step, get sideways, both hands on, tip of the racket slightly higher than your head level, and the strings facing off to the side. Here's the next idea, and I'll show you this from the side. When you drop the racket, that's when you wanna start uncoiling the body. You don't want to drop the racket and then begin uncoiling because you don't get a seamless movement of energy flow through the body in the kinetic chain. So you want to be, as you're dropping, unwinding and uncoiling into the shot. Now, as you are dropping your racket, you want to close your racket. Closing the racket looks like this. Now, this is closing, and so is this. What I like to tell people is think 45 degrees. That's a nice, easy way of thinking close the racket face, down below the ball, because what it's going to do is it's going to allow your racket to be facing forward as you hit the ball. Depending on the speed of your swing, and if you swing really fast, you can get away with your racket face being a few degrees closed. That actually helps you get even more spin up the back of the ball. Now, as you are dropping your racket and you're uncoiling with this non-hitting arm, don't drop it. I've been a coach for 25 years. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen players do this, where they hug themselves, where they turn and they have every intention of unwinding into the shot. But they end up reaching toward their opponent initially when they turn, rather than doing this. They reach almost like they're waving to their opponent immediately, which is not what you want to do. Because what will happen is you will hug yourself and your non-hitting hand drops. So when you drop the racket and you're uncoiling, what I tell my students is, as you're spinning up the back of the ball and making contact, wave to your opponent. So take the racket back with both hands, and as you're dropping and closing your racket below contact height, wave to your opponent when you're striking the ball. That means that your non-hitting hand is up. When the non-hitting hand stays up, it makes it very easy to turn the hips. When the non-hitting hand drops, that's when the non-hitting hand can go the opposite of the hitting arm, and you end up hugging yourself. It's like you're in a straitjacket. This is a really common mistake with many, many recreational players. So wave to your opponent as you're striking the ball. As you're hitting, you should be spinning up the back. Watch it from the side. You don't want to just hit flat into the back of the ball. Tennis is a lifting game. You need the ball to go up off of your racket. Why? Because there's a net there. You can't stand back by the baseline and hit the ball straight forward and get the ball to go over the net. I don't care how hard you hit. The ball has to go up. Tennis is a lifting game. And the more we swing up, the more that ball is going to spin down because of spin, because of, high pressure on the top of the ball, and the ball is going to get sucked down into the court. So we want to be going up as we hit the ball. That's going to give us the control we're looking for, and that's what the Topspin Pro is just so perfect at training you to do. As you're spinning up the back of the ball, you're keeping your head super still, and then I want you to catch the racket up over the shoulder just as a place to stop the racket, then come back to the ready position again. All right, so let me demonstrate some forehands based on what you just saw. Show you from the front. I'll show you all different directions. Make sure I don't hit my wall here. Gonna keep my head super still. Split step, turn, drop. Try to do everything I just learned in my video. Split, turn, drop. I'm waving to the wall as I hit. So if you have the Topspin Pro, you can film yourself demonstrating. And it gives you a huge advantage because when your opponents can't practice, you're home practicing your forehand, your backhand. You can even practice your serve, understanding serve pronation. Get one of these. It would mean the world to me if you used my affiliate link in the description below to get a Topspin Pro. Film yourself. It's the really only way to know if you're doing all the things we just worked on. If you incorporate what you just learned on Fernando Verdasco's forehand into your forehand, There is no doubt you're going to gain confidence, win more matches, and play much better tennis. This is Ryan Reedy from 2MinuteTennis.net. You got this!